Hello and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be solving quadratic equations by completing the square. Before we get in how to do that, we need to review perfect square trinomials and how to factor them. So in example 1, it says each of the following is a perfect square trinomial, and they want us to factor each expression. So let's review real quick. A perfect square trinomial has this form: a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And when we factor it, we get a plus b quantity squared. You could also have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, and that would factor to a minus b quantity squared. All right, so let's look at problem A. We have the perfect square trinomial x squared plus 8x plus 16. So you're going to identify A, the square root of x squared is x, and then identify B. The square root of 16 is 4. So our factorization would be x plus 4 quantity squared. All right, problem B, we have x squared minus 18x plus 81. Our A value would be x, and our B value would be square root of 81, or 9. So our factorization would be x minus 9 quantity squared. All right, pause the video and try problem C and D on your own. All right, welcome back. For C, I got 5x plus 6 quantity squared. And for D, I got 7x minus 8 quantity squared. Now, the nice thing about perfect square trinomials is if you're ever presented a quadratic equation that contains a perfect square trinomial, you can solve it using the square root property. So in example 2, it says solve each of the following using the square root property. In problem A, we have x squared plus 4x plus 4. So we have a perfect square trinomial that's equal to 25. So what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite the left side, x squared plus 4x plus 4, in its factored form. So that would be x plus 2 quantity squared equals 25. Once you have it as a binomial squared equal to a constant, you can take the square root of both sides to give you x plus 2 equals plus or minus 5. Subtract 2 from both sides to get negative 2 plus or minus 5. So your solution set would be negative 2 plus 5 is 3, and negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Right. Problem B, 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. This is a perfect square trinomial, so I can factor it to 2x minus 7 quantity squared is equal to 81. Now take the square root of both sides. So 2x minus 7 equals plus or minus 9. Now we'll add 7, or actually what I'm going to do is rewrite this as two equations. 2x minus 7 equals positive 9. 2x minus 7 equals negative 9. So add the 7 to get 2x equals 16, and then divide by 2 to get 8. Over here, add the 7 to get negative 2, and then divide. So our solution set is 8, negative 1. Now, that method works great when you already have a perfect square trinomial. But what if you don't have a perfect square trinomial? Well, you can create a perfect square trinomial from a binomial. So let me show you how that process works. In example 3, for each binomial shown below, determine the number that is needed to create a perfect square trinomial. Now to do this, we're going to take the value of b, the coefficient of b, divide it by 2, and then square it. So you might want to write that down. Take the coefficient of b, divide it by 2, and then square it. So for problem A, we have x squared plus 22x plus blank. What would we have to put in the blank to create a perfect square trinomial. So you'll take your coefficient of b, which is 22, divide it by 2, and then square it. So this would be 11 squared, which is 121. So in problem B, I would take the negative 30, divide it by 2, and square it. Now remember, you're always going to get a positive when you square a number. So negative 30 divided by 2 is negative 15, and negative 15 times negative 15 is positive 225. All right, pause the video and try problem C on your own. All right, welcome back. Let's see how you did. I did 20 divided by 2, quantity squared, which was 100. All right, now those three, not too bad. But what happens when you have an odd number as your middle term? Well, when you have an odd number as your middle term, the number that's going to complete the square is going to be a fraction. So let me show you what I mean. Take the coefficient of b, divide it by 2, and square it. Now, when we square a fraction, you square the top number, the numerator, and you square the denominator. 2 squared is 4. Do not do anything to that fraction. Leave it as an improper fraction. Don't turn it into a decimal. Don't turn it into a mixed number. All right. Next one, negative 9 divided by 2, quantity squared. So negative 9 squared, 81. 2 squared is 4. All right. Pause the video and try problem F on your own. All right. Welcome back. Hopefully you remembered that the understood coefficient of b was 1. So 1 divided by 2, quantity squared. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. If you need to correct any mistakes, just pause the video and do that right now before we move on. All right, now let's get into how to solve by completing the square. So the first thing we're going to do is rewrite the equation in the form, and this should say x squared plus bx equals opposite of c. All right. So, for example, in this equation, we have x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 0. I want to rewrite it in the form x squared plus bx equals opposite of c. If c was positive 7, now it is negative 7. All right. Step 2, find the number that will complete the square and add this number to both sides of the equation. So our middle number is 8. We want to divide that by 2 and square it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add that number to the left side and add that number to the right side. Now what you've done is you've just created a perfect square trinomial, which is very easy to factor it. So remember to factor it. You take the square root of x squared, which is x, the square root of 16, which is 4, and you put a plus in between them. On the right side, negative 7 plus 16 is 9. All right, so we just did step 3. We factored the left side of the equation. Step 4, take the square root of both sides. So that would leave me x plus 4 equals the square root of 9 plus or minus 3. And now it wants us to solve this. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus 3. So our solution set would be negative 4 plus 3, which is negative 1, and negative 4 minus 3, which is negative 7. Now, to check this, I'm going to use Desmos. You could use any type of calculator here. You go back to the original equation, x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 0. Everywhere you see an x, you're going to plug in your first solution, which was negative 1. So parenthesis, negative 1, parenthesis squared, plus 8, parenthesis, negative 1, close parenthesis, plus 7, and this should equal 0. And it does. Now I want to check my second solution, which is negative 7. So I'll just change these negative 1s to negative 7s, and that also equals 0. So our answer checks out. All right. Now, in example 4, we will be solving 4 equations. I will not show the check step because I don't want this video to become too long, but you should definitely do the check step on your own. So in example 4, if I want to solve each quadratic equation by completing the square, the first thing I need to do is rewrite this in the form x squared plus bx equals opposite of c. So I will add 5 to both sides. So I'm going to have x squared plus 4x equals positive 5. Now I'm going to provide some space to create a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to put a blank there. Now if I add a number to the left side, I'm going to have to also add it to the right side. All right, so to create the perfect square, remember, take the coefficient of your middle term, 4, divide it by 2, and square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I'm adding a 4 here and adding a 4 here. Again, the reason we did this is we were trying to create a perfect square trinomial, because perfect square trinomials are very easy to factor. So now factor the left side. X, square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. So x plus 2 squared equals 9. Now take the square root of the left side, the square root of the right side. So x plus 2 equals plus or minus 3. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus 3. So my solution set would be positive 1 and negative 5. Again, you should definitely check these answers on your own. All right, problem B. We have x squared minus 18x plus 71 equals negative 9. So I want to start off by subtracting 71 from both sides. So that would leave me x squared minus 18x equals, over here, negative 9 minus 71. Whoops, 71. And that would be negative 80. All right, now we're going to complete the square. To do that, I need to leave a little blank, though, because we need room to put our third term. All right, let's figure out what number will complete the square. So I'm going to take my middle term, divide it by 2, and square it. So negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. Negative 9 squared is positive 81. So I'll add that number to both sides. All right, now we have a perfect square trinomial that we can easily factor. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 81 is 9, and I'll put a minus in between them. Negative 80 plus 81 is positive 1. Now square root both sides. So x minus 9 equals plus or minus 1. So x equals positive 9 plus or minus 1. So that would give me a solution set of 10, 8. All right, problem C. X squared minus 12x minus 4 equals 8. First thing I want to do is add the 4 to both sides to give me x squared minus 12x is equal to 12. Now make some room to create a perfect square trinomial. So to do that, you're going to take your middle coefficient, divide it by 2, and square it. So negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. All right, now that you have a perfect square trinomial, you can factor it, taking the square root of x squared to get x, the square root of 36 to get 6, put a minus in between them. Over here, this will be what, 48? All right, now take the square root of both sides. So we have x minus 6 equals plus or minus square root 48. Now, square root of 48 can be simplified to plus or minus 4 square root 3. Now add 6 to both sides. And generally, we do not simplify it any further from here. So just leave your answer like that. All right, let's see. X squared plus 7x plus 7 equals 66 minus x. Now the first thing I notice is this x is on the wrong side. So I want to add x here and add x. Whoops. I want to add x here. And then I want to subtract 7 here and subtract 7 here. So this will give me x squared. 7x plus 1x is 8x equals 66 minus 7, which is going to give me 59. Now let's create a perfect square trinomial. So half of 8 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. Now factor the left side into x plus 4, quantity squared. On the right side, 59 plus 16 is 75. Take the square root of both sides. So this would give me x plus 4 equals, the square root of 75 will simplify to plus or minus 5 square root 3, and then subtract 4 from both sides. Final answer. And that concludes today's lesson, solving quadratic equations by completing the square.